All right, I think I'm recording. This is my last talk as the host of the Zodiac Lounge. And I like that. Mercury is present. He's like, yeah, don't get all sentimental about it or sad or whatever. So first I'd like to say thank you all for coming. I think we had a good, intimate Zodiac Lounge in this new space for the Zodiac Lounge, in Akila's space. So I'm really happy to be here. And I want to say that, you know, these 13 years, and I know many of you, if not all of you, I mean, except for you, I have been relative, and Gina and of course Akila, have been relatively new to the Zodiac Lounge family. But I want to thank you for being part of it. And I want to say, since you know this is going to go on YouTube as well, why am I pulling back somewhat from the Zodiac Lounge? Let me first say that the Zodiac Lounge, as we understand it, will continue, right? So Akila will still head it up, and we may have Krena also working with us in terms of hosting and creating the next leg of the Zodiac Lounge. So I'm very interested in hearing more about the adventures that we have with the Zodiac Lounge coming. But why am I pulling back? Well, I'm pulling back in order to kind of focus, to focus on my other aspects of my career, to focus on what I'm doing in terms of the astrological community, in terms of diversifying that community, which it desperately needs. I'm also focusing on writing a book and teaching more classes. So I'm putting a lot more in terms of virtual and also other communities. And I feel like on some deep soul level, the work that I have been doing for the Zodiac Lounge has come to a temporary completion. So it's gotten to a point where it has a life independent of me. You know, my goal was to make sure that it is diversified, because we didn't at one particular point, at least in Bed-Stuy where we are now, right? We didn't have a diversity of healers and seers. We didn't see that in terms of our community. And now that we are seeing more of that in a regular sense, and thanks to social media and the World Wide Web, we even have more of that. So I think I can pull back and allow, quote unquote, younger people, I just said I had my Chiron return, younger people take it over and do more with it. So we are at an ending of a sort and a beginning. And I thought that was the perfect thing and the perfect segue to talk about this particular moment in history. So one of the things I want to say, like Mercury, today is, I was almost at August, but it's April 14th. And so what we're about to have is Mercury go direct and a new moon in Aries. So we're coming toward a particular kind of point of closure, and also in terms of a shift. There's some other big things happening. Chiron, right? We were just talking about Chiron. It's at 29 degrees Pisces and about to go into Aries. So what that means, I'll get into that a little bit, but Chiron is also about to go into a new sign. The other big shift is happening more so next month, and that's Uranus, who's about to go out of Aries from the last 7 years and go into Taurus. So that's going to be a big moment for Taurians in terms of what's happening with their energy. So we have a lot of shifting, a lot of endings and beginnings and beginnings and endings, and that kind of goes to the key point I have for Aries, because Aries is probably like, so when is this going to be about me? I don't hear anything about Aries. I mean, he just mentioned the Chiron going in Aries, but what's this got to do with me? So Aries, this is for you. This is, I talked about before why Aries is first, right? I have a whole talk now that's on YouTube on why Aries is first in the zodiac. But I want to say something about what I've been doing in the scope of the Zodiac Lounge. And what we astrologers all do, but we may not readily admit it. So I'm about to drop our secret, right? The big secret, and I've said it before, so it's not that new. We tend to focus on I was just picking on Dondi, being a Pisces, or we talk about being a Scorpio, or being a Virgo, or all these particular things. But here's the bottom line. You have all 12 signs of the zodiac within you. The cycle of being didn't just stop when you were born with your sign. It just stopped in that sense as one particular moment you focused on as your identity. And what I want Aries to understand, especially as we have Chiron about to go into your sign, as Uranus is leaving your sign, is to recognize that your identity is not a static thing. You're not just to be here to be the first and the only and the pioneer only in that sense. You are an ongoing I am, an ongoing being. I am is a transitive verb in that sense. It's a way of being, a way of participating in the wholeness of life. And so the moment that you ossify your whole sense of who you are and what you can be and what you have been and what the present is, you are putting yourself in a cage. Release yourself from the cage is what we're learning from Uranus moving from out of Aries into Taurus, and anchor yourself into the ground and participate in the fullness of the earth. That means that you will have to kind of really tap into your courage. When I say courage, you're like, well, doesn't that sound perseverance? Yeah, it can be perseverance, but it can be very challenging and fearful to face the future where you don't know exactly who you're going to be and how you're going to be. Which is kind of going along with what I was saying a little bit earlier about Chiron in Aries. Now, I will be honest, I do not use Chiron in my regular practice, right? I will, Sam, you don't really talk about Chiron. I don't. But I have a Chiron and Pisces in the first house. I have had some thoughts about Chiron, right? So what I will say about Chiron's transition into Aries is it becomes an encounter with your own sense of futility, right? You can even say the wound, but it's deeper than just the wound, because the wound can happen at any particular moment that you encounter the futility of being. Why am I here? What is my sense of identity? So I do all this work to kind of craft this identity. I wear my red shirt, I wear my funky glasses. I do all these things, right, to be who I am. And then, it still doesn't work out with that particular person I wanted, or it still doesn't work out with the particular job I wanted, or it doesn't work out in terms of the person I thought I was, especially when I failed. So Chiron in Aries is really going to challenge how we craft identity, which is a good thing, because in this age of selfies where we become so individualistic, it might be a good time to kind of have some means to rethink and to contemplate, what does it really mean to be? What does it really mean in order to have this sense of identity? So I'm going to come out of pocket and talk a little bit politically, even though I usually try to avoid that somewhat, right? Okay. So people like to say, identity politics in America is dead. It is something that is destroying America. It's divisive, all these particular things. So I'm just going to say to these people, because, I've come from the school of identity politics. Hello, I'm black. I'm going to say, we just getting started. And identity is going to become a lot more complicated than how we just talk about identity as being black. It's going to be about how we define ourselves in terms of our genders, right? Rather than assuming that it's just two. Okay? It's going to be how we deal with our sexuality, rather than it's just well, are you het or are you gay? No, there's a spectrum. So we're going to deal with spectrums of identity along so many different, scales that we might be dizzied by them. So realize that when we start talking about our wounds, our encounter with futility, this is going to go really deep for us. And it's not just going to be static in one particular moment of being, not just from your birth chart, but an ongoing contemplation of who you are. So Aries, if I had any message for you, as Uranus is about to leave your sign and go into Taurus, my message is, have you really embraced your identity as something that is a work of art, a process, right? than thinking that it's just this static thing. Because the moment that you kind of cling to it more as this static thing, rather than something that you imbue into other things, right? Notice the difference. There's one thing to say like, I'll pull this out, my EOS. I am my EOS, right? Right? The moment that you think that your identity is determined by this other thing, including your physical self, you're losing the power of your identity. Then you have actually gone into something else, right? You've gone into venerating something other than the true self. And the true self, right, is something that is beyond just what we see before us. It's something that is generated from our consciousness. But when we take our consciousness and we can imbue something to use it and to share it, then we're participating in the full power of Taurus, right? Because the crystallization of identity into something that shapes the world and is infused in the world around it is what the Taurus experience is about. So Uranus in Aries is taking the wisdom of what it's called over the 7 years and putting it into the Uranus and Taurus to talk about how are we dealing with the things that we created. We can lose shape, we can lose track of that because we can start thinking about these things make us. We can lose track of our divinity. So that would be the clearest and key message I have for us to contemplate as we talk about these endings. Obviously, we know endings are not fully endings. They can be beginnings. And beginnings are scary sometimes because they can feel like endings. But one thing astrology has taught us, and one thing that has been kind of the idea of the zodiac lounge of holding the moon and the sun in your hand, is realizing that life is a cycle, and cycles change and grow and multiply and then decline and then grow again. So embrace that in yourself. Embrace that at this new moon. And stop fearing Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is not so much about Mercury coming up and trying to mess you up and mess up your life and destroy your relationships. It's another cycle. And it's a very powerful cycle to deal with how you're processing visions in your mind. So embrace that as renewal, rather than resisting the renewal to hold on something that is already outworn. That would be my message for you. Thank you for coming to this Zodiac Lounge, all the previous ones you've come, for listening to these videos or watching these videos, and Allah bless. Thank you.
Thank you.